So if you've read any headlines on the internet today, you will have found out that Dragon's Dogma 2 is a little bit in trouble. It's gotten mostly negative reviews on Steam. It changed to mixed reviews very recently, like while recording this. And for a number of different reasons, it's really an example of a lot of bad things happening. It's a very disappointing showing from Capcom. And there's also a lot of misinformation and a lot of people trying to mislead opinions to kind of form a hate bandwagon that really isn't necessary considering how many real things the game has bad, and that's referring to microtransactions. Because I wouldn't be talking about something if there wasn't some nuance to explain to it. So, hey, I'm Mug Thief. Let's get into this very unfortunate set of circumstances, to be honest. So to start off, I just want to say, most of the criticism levied at Dragon's Dogma 2 is very much justified. And a lot of the negative reviews that it is receiving are very logical. And we're going to talk about the ones that aren't, and a little bit of a hate campaign that seems to be going on. That, once again, not very necessary considering the circumstances, but I do have a bone to pick with that hate campaign because that's the one that's misleading. Let's jump over to the Steam page for just a second. This is Dragon's Dogma 2. It is currently sitting at mixed 42%, seems to be climbing. Why? Why is this such a big fiasco here at launch? Well, performance is really bad. You're going to see that throughout the reviews. Some of these negative reviews are pretty much just saying, hey, the game glitches, it bugs, and it just doesn't work well. I am playing this game, and when I say the optimization is bad, I don't even mean like just general optimization. I'm not even sure what is going on here. From interviews with IGN, it seems to be that the game is very CPU dependent for the actors, for the NPCs, and whenever there's a lot of them, which doesn't need to be a lot, it can be like 7, the game just can't deal with it. I'm running on a 13th gen i9 and a 4090. When I'm out and about, I'm getting around 90 FPS at approximately 4K, just to simplify my resolution choice. And I will enter town, and it will dip into 25, 30 frames for like 2 seconds, stabilize, and then kind of sit around 50 to 60. And that should not happen. And it's very disappointing because Capcom's previous games have been pretty much perfect, right? Resident Evil 4, a game we're going to talk a lot about in this video, runs incredibly well on a long list of machines and hardware configurations, and that is not the case here. Another reason it's getting all of these negative reviews is this little tag over here incorporates third-party DRM, Denuvo. Now, I'm going to make a video talking about DRM because I think it's a topic that merits discussion, but it is a completely legitimate reason to just say, do not recommend this game, I do not like it, I don't want DRM. I do not support DRM. My opinion on it is a little bit more nuanced, which is why I'll make that video, but rest assured, I think that DRM in the way that it's applied today is an anti-consumer practice. So, bad, totally justifiable. Aside from that, there's multiple different oversights in the game. Things like how you cannot restart the game, so you can't delete your character and start fresh. That just isn't possible without tampering with your files in a way that most people would never want to do. And they have acknowledged a lot of these. And then on top of all of these issues, the big one is the microtransactions. So Dragon's Dogma 2 features a long list of microtransactions. Now, a lot of people that I have seen are trying to tell you, trying to convince you, I guess the correct word would be they are lying to you and telling you that these microtransactions are outright pay to win and that the game is designed around them so that whatever convenience that these microtransactions offer are things that were stripped out or modified of the integrity and the vision behind the game in order to make them more appealing to you. And the problem is that as much as that can be very logical, history has shown us, especially in the case of Japanese games, that that's not true. They just tend to put in very bad, confusing microtransactions that seem to exist for people who actively don't want to play the game or are so lazy that they want to avoid playing the game they paid for, but they do not compromise on the integrity of the game itself. You might say, I don't believe you. Why would I believe that statement? Well, there's a couple of pieces of evidence of this, primarily firsthand experience that I have, that you probably have, and that millions of different consumers have. A lot has been said about reviewers and how they didn't mention the microtransactions. Well, that's because they don't have access to them. They play the same exact game that we play, they just can't buy microtransactions. That's a pretty hard case about how the game isn't designed around them. And I'm not saying this to defend Capcom, I'm just saying that this is kind of what it is. I don't think that microtransactions should exist. I think that, well, okay, that's a loaded statement. I don't think that microtransactions in single-player, full-ass premium games should exist in any capacity. If you're playing a free-to-play game, well, I guess they have to make money somehow, right? It's either advertisement or microtransactions. But in a premium $70 game, you should not have microtransactions under any circumstance. But having said that, these ones are pretty useless. They are worse than in the past, and I'm gonna list exactly why. That is the camping gear, which allows you to use a lighter camping gear that is just a straight up advantage compared to the camping gear you normally have, and it unlocks it for sale in the game. So that's paying for a little bit more than convenience. That's paying for an advantage. And then port crystal. The port crystal for $2.99 is also like arguably the strongest item or the most impactful item in the game. If you don't know how the fast travel system works here, fast travel in the marketing, in the design, and in the previous game, it's all about you require consumables to use fast travel. The game is centered around exploration and taking your time and all of these things. And the only way you fast travel is to specific locations using consumables. Those locations are normally the major cities and wherever you place port crystals, which you can find in the game. You can place them down and then you can pick them up and move them and teleport to that location whenever you want in exchange for one of those consumables. And this DLC, this microtransaction here, adds an extra one. It adds another one into the game, which is a pretty big deal. Is it the end of the world? Is it really that transformative? Does it change the game? No. And that's one of my big problems with this whole thing, that people are trying to make you believe that every little thing here does change the game. All of these items that are not those two are very easily obtainable in the game. They cost very little money in game. And there's no reason ever to buy any of these things. You get plenty of rift crystals by just playing. You get wake stones. You can farm wake stones pretty easily just by playing. And while this might sound like it's strong because if you die, it allows you to revive, I mean, let's be honest, you can just go back about a minute and not spend $1 and actually play the game. And it's not like when you die, the game has a pop-up of, hey, do you want to pay $1 to revive immediately? I mean, I guess that because these things exist, maybe one day in the future that could happen, and that's just another reason why these microtransactions shouldn't exist, but that's where the nuance is. That doesn't mean that they actively harm the game as it is right now by existing. Which is why at the top of this video I said, we don't need this. We don't need to rely on this microtransaction criticism on an example of microtransactions that are just kind of confusing and worthless to criticize the game. There's so much more important stuff than to have people on Twitter lying about how valuable or how important these microtransactions are. And if you don't believe my argument that they don't affect the design of the game, this is Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 has an enormous list of DLC, and aside from the usuals like just selling a very expensive soundtrack or the DLC actually, the microtransactions here are pay-to-win upgrade tickets that allow you to upgrade your guns to their maximum ability. And they are in the game, you can obtain them, but if you wanted more of them, you can just pay $2.99 per ticket or bundles of more tickets. And the general consensus on this stupid microtransaction right here is that it makes you overpowered and imbalances the game. The game is very tightly balanced. It's an excellent game, and it's balanced around what is in the game, not around you being lazy and paying for it. But this has been happening forever. I remember on Xbox 360, Devil May Cry 4 sold, as you see here, blue orbs Proud Souls and Red Orbs, which allow you to buy items for healing in mission, items for reviving yourself in mission, and upgrading your character to the maximum. That is pay to win, but this is also a game with 6 different difficulty levels that is designed around you getting better at combat so you can tackle higher difficulty levels just for the pleasure of you being cool and doing that thing, beating the game. What's the point of buying revival stuff? You're just bypassing the game. Which is why I assume that it's harmless or actually very harmful to people who end up buying it. And it's just very difficult to conceive who would buy it. And Capcom has been putting this sort of stuff all the way since back then in all of their games. Just because these games have gotten free passes in the past while having all of this doesn't mean that Dragon's Dogma 2 gets to have a free pass today. It's a shame we didn't call this out back then, but it does put into perspective the severity of the issue. It's worth calling out. Microtransactions, bad, full stop, but not lying to people online, like consumers lying to other consumers and just saying, hey, actually, the game is riddled with microtransactions and designed around them. And that's just not the case. One of the more surprising things about that specific microtransaction brigade is things like infinite wealth, Like a Dragon. Like a Dragon is incredibly bad when it comes to its microtransactions. Not only does it sell a bunch of stuff from costumes to special boosters, it just straight up sells you ways to level up your character. You buy this and your characters level up, or you buy this and your jobs for each character level up for $15.99, for $9.99. And this is the same game that locked New Game Plus behind a paywall in the deluxe edition, and it's not even available here. You can't even just buy New Game Plus as a microtransaction even. But you might notice that it's very positive. Just like Resident Evil 4 is overwhelmingly positive with 97%, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is very positive with a 91%. And why is that? Because even though this exists, people gave it the benefit of the doubt of actually going to find out or trusting other people or trusting reviewers on if this was affecting the game. And the consensus is the game is pretty easy. It's actually a little bit too favorable to the player. And like the time it would save, like again, very Japanese thing. These microtransactions would kind of defeat the purpose and take the fun out of the game. So they're dumb and useless. And they are not what people are making them out to be in the case of Dragon's Dogma 2. And I have no horse in this race. I'm not here to defend Capcom or Dragon's Dogma. I think Capcom, generally speaking, makes excellent games. Monster Hunter, some of my favorite games ever. Resident Evil, some of my favorite games ever. Dragon's Dogma, one of my favorite games ever. But when they pull bad shit, we have to call it out. And in this case, I think that this mixed rating is very valuable because it's here to inform somebody that reaches this page that, hey, you should investigate a little bit. There are concerns. There are things that you need to be worried about. The part that makes me confused and angry is that the top comment both here and on the internet at large seems to be about the microtransactions. And for as happy as I am that we are finally calling out this stupid stuff that happens with them and that these people try and pull, this isn't the main concern of the game. The main concern are the performance, Denuvo, the oversights, the glitches, especially for me at least, the performance. And I feel like a lot of that comment towards the microtransactions is heavily misleading, and I don't want that to be spread around. I want it to be very clear, and I hope I have cleared that up in this video. I imagine more people are making videos about this. And also, just in general, I hope this video serves as a warning of what's going on. And hey, I'm pretty sad for Capcom. I hope they can recover from this. As I said, one of my favorite studios, one of my favorite publishers. They've got Monster Hunter Wilds on the horizon. A lot of people said that Dragon's Dogma 2 was going to be a test of this engine at a different level, the RE engine for Monster Hunter Wilds. Didn't really come out the gate swinging when it comes to performance on consoles or on PC. So let's hope this is fixed sooner rather than later, because it is a bit of a mess. So yeah, just wanted to clear up that whole thing around the microtransactions, and about what's going on. I've been Mugthy. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like, since this will probably become another battleground of a video. Subscribe if you want more coverage. Go check out my Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen retrospective that should be up by now. Put a lot of work into that one. Really had fun with it. And as always, I will see you again very soon.